Good morning. My name is Shannon Huffman Polson, and I'm an author, a speaker, a veteran of Army aviation, and the founder and CEO of the Grit Institute, an online leadership development training platform dedicated to ethical leadership and people-centered leadership. I'm also the author of The Grit Factor, which will be released in September 2020 from Harvard Business Review Press. The subtitle is Courage, Resilience, and Leadership in the Most Male-Dominated Organization in the World. But today I want to talk to you about muddy boots leadership. This is a part of the most critical skill a leader can have. I usually start this conversation by saying that leaders learn that they have to listen first. A leader knows that her communications must be strategic, and she has to begin by listening first. Now, the component of that I like to remember back from my days in Army aviation, when I was one of the first women to fly the Apache attack helicopter, was something that we called muddy boots leadership. And what that meant is, as a young lieutenant, I had to get out of flight operations, out of the company headquarters, walk down the hangar steps, and go onto the hangar floor and into the crew chief office. Because my job wasn't just to fly missions. It wasn't just the cool stuff that had to do with the aircraft. I was also responsible for the pilots and the crew chiefs that turned the wrenches and checked the logbooks every single day. So I had to get out of my office and down on the hangar floor. Now I'll tell you, my crew chiefs scared me a little bit at first. They were Harley riding, beer drinking, Rage Against the Machine listening young guys. And I was an English major from Duke. So we didn't typically discuss books, club stories, or what it was that we were picking up to read that weekend. But when I first came into the crew chief office, I picked up a logbook and asked a couple of questions. Then I looked up to the phase maintenance chart and said, "Oh, I see that part is on order. Do we know if it's coming in yet?" And then I walked out onto the hangar floor where a crew chief was working on an aircraft all opened up and said, "Teach me something about what you're doing. They don't train us to be mechanics." And little by little, I got to know these guys. And little by little, I got to love them. They were 201 hard workers. Every single one of them had hopes and dreams and ambitions and desires. Now, you remember what I said that time that I was promoted to first lieutenant by my very first battalion commander, when he said that the only good use of any increased power you have is the increased responsibility to take care of your people. And I knew that leadership was a sacred trust. But the only way that I could take care of my people was to get out of my office and to spend time with them. Especially in a situation like what we're facing today. Grit is something that every single one of us needs to find. Grit is something that every single one of us needs. And as leaders, we have to find ways to take care of our people. And the only way we can take care of our people is by spending time with them. Because I knew that every time we launched that aircraft, there were only 2 of us in the cockpit. But it takes a team to launch that Apache. There was a team on board every launch, even with only 2 of us in the cockpit. How can you take care of your team today in these uncertain times and these frightening times? By showing up, by checking in, by making sure that you listen first.